Gemara says that the reason the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed was because of senseless hatred, because we hated each other at that time for no reason. We thought there were reasons, perhaps, when we were going through what we were going through then, but the Talmud says it was senseless. It didn't make any sense. And so the Rebbe says that to combat that and to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, we have to have senseless love, which means to love people that we can't find any possible reason why we should love them. So the mitzvah begins by people that you don't know exactly how to see any good in them. That's when the mitzvah begins. That's where this doesn't begin there, but that's when the going gets tough and the tough have to get going. I read a story today, an unbelievable story. It's a true story. I won't say the names and the place the story happened, but this is a true story. There's a boy named Yossi, he was in yeshiva, and his father got up in the middle of the night, he had to go somewhere, and he sees the keys to his cars aren't there. He goes out, and he sees I make a long story short, after some investigation, he finds his car by an intersection, crashed, the car is ruined, and there is his son has been killed. So this father is shocked, of course, and the yeshiva where the boy was from, of course, they're all shocked, and the Rosh Yeshiva gathers the boys together and breaks the news, and everyone in the yeshiva is their friend. There's one boy though, you see on his face, Meir, and Meir could tell something's going on. Meir knows something, part of the story that no one else knows. So the Rosh Yeshiva asks Meir, what's going on? Meir doesn't want to say. Finally, Meir says the truth. The truth was that Meir and Yossi were going together. Meir and this boy were going together on a trip, and the trip they shouldn't have been going on in the middle of the night, wherever they were going, and they crashed. And after they crashed, so Meir left Yossi because he didn't want to get in trouble, and he left Yossi. Yossi had gotten hurt, and Meir left. Nothing happened to him at all. So Meir left, and he was fine, and this boy was bleeding. So that when that Tzala came, the Tzala saw that Yossi had already died, but it wasn't because there was some wound in him that was a fatal wound. It was just because he was bleeding, and there's no one there to take care of him. And had Meir called Hatzalah right away, he could have saved him. So the head of this yeshiva gathers the boys together, and he talk about the incident, and he asks them, why do you think Meir didn't call? And 26 out of the 30 boys in the class said the same thing. He didn't call because he didn't want to get in trouble. Now think about that. The guy didn't want to call because he didn't want to get in trouble. Why didn't he want to get in trouble? He didn't want to get in trouble because it was worth it for him that he shouldn't have to go through some pain of confessing and embarrassing himself, even though his friend's life is at stake. And the reason this kind of thing happens is because the person feels he has nobody to trust, and he feels he can't be open. He can't be himself, and therefore, even on the worst scenario where it's really, really necessary, it's critical that he be open, he doesn't do it anyways. That's what happened to me. That's the story. So here, the story, we see how important it is to fulfill the words of the Pirkei Avos. Rabbi Yeshua ben Pracha's teaching, we're going to focus on tonight. Yeshua ben Pracha says, "Have done as kol ha'adam l'kav schus." Should always judge everybody favorably. That's his teaching. What does his teaching really mean? It sounds a little bit naive. Judge every person all the time favorably. You know someone did whatever they did, and you think you know why they did whatever they did, and you have all the facts to prove that this is the way things are. Does the Torah really tell us to ignore all the facts, ignore how you feel, ignore what logic says, and yet you should say the person did the right thing, no matter what happened? Always assume the guy did the right thing. It sounds not just naive; it sounds like we're lying to ourselves. What's going on over here? How can the Torah be telling us that we're supposed to tell ourselves things which aren't true. A friend of mine got a call. This guy, a wealthy man, he lent someone some money, lent a lot of people money, and he asked the rabbi, my friend, he says, what should I do, Rabbi? I lend people money, and this guy called me. I lent him money 2 years ago. He didn't pay back the money. Not only did not pay back the money, but he called me again this year. He didn't say, excuse himself, why didn't he pay back? He just asked for another loan. Ignoring the fact that he owes me money already. And he says the guy just, my friend told me the guy just was like, what do I do? I mean, obviously this guy is not an honest person. And he just takes advantage of this rich person who has some money in his opinion. But the rich guy is like, listen, I can't do this. What does Hashem expect me to do? The guy owes me money and he's pretending like I never lent him money in the first place, asking for a new loan. What's going on? There was 150 years ago, there's a Rav Diskin. He writes these words. He says, he says, our eyes see the opposite of what this Mishnah is telling us. We see, he says, in Yerushalayim, we see that it's full of people which are not honest, and they're, how could we lie to ourselves? You could say the Torah tells us to ignore things, but how could the Torah tell us to always judge another person favorably, that they always did the right thing? What does that even mean? How could we be lying to ourselves? There's a story about Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara doesn't say who the story is with, but there's a sefer called Shiltis de Rav Acha, and the Shiltis de Rav Acha, he says that the story actually happened to Rabbi Akiva. And when you hear this story, you think like how could the Torah even tell us to act this way? The Torah says a story, something we should emulate, but really you'll hear the story and you think like, this is too much. This sounds like something way too hard to do. It sounds something which is like from outer space. This is a story. As we all know, Rabbi Akiva, when he first got married to Rachel, he had a really hard begashmias. Financially, it was very difficult. His wife was from a very rich family, Kalbo Savua. And now Rabbi Akiva had to earn a living, and he had no money. He had worked before as a shepherd for Kalbo Savua, and now he has nothing. So what did Rabbi Akiva do? He found a job, far from his family, all the way at the other end of Eretz Yisrael. He was living in the south, this was in the north. He went all the way to the north of Eretz Yisrael, and there he worked for this man for 3 years. He worked very hard. He didn't go home. He worked for every day for 3 years. Came the day before Yom Kippur. He tells the guy, listen, I want to go home. Please give me my wages for these past 3 years. During these 3 years, just giving him enough money to just to food and a place to sleep, but he says, now I want to get paid. So this man is a very, very wealthy man. He has his orchards, he has his beautiful house, and he tells him, I have nothing to give you. I have no money. So Rabbi Akiva says, so can you give me some fruits? I'll sell some fruits. He says, I have no fruits. Can you give me some items in your house? I'll sell the items in your house. I have nothing. I can't give you anything. So Rabbi Akiva goes back home empty-handed. 2 days later, the guy comes with the wagons full of stuff to give to Rabbi Akiva as payment for his wages. And he asks Rabbi Akiva, tell me, when I told you that I had nothing to give you, what did you think? He said, I thought that you certainly made a vow to give all your possessions to the temple, to Beis HaMikdash. And since you vowed to give all your possessions to the temple, they weren't yours anymore. And therefore you couldn't give me my wages because you had nothing. So he told Rabbi Akiva, you're exactly right. That's exactly what happened. That's the story the Gemara says. Let me ask you a question. If you were in that guy's shoes, what do you think you should be doing? Not what would you do in the spur of the moment. I think if that guy would kill him at that moment and shoot him, it would be a homicide that no jury in the world would convict him of. But I'm asking you, you were in the guy's shoes, what's the right thing to do? To judge him favorably? That's the right thing to do? To say that the guy is in a $10 million house, and in his $10 million house, he is judging favorably. $10 million house, and he says he has nothing? What would you think? The Gemara is telling us a story. We should learn something from the story, but the story sounds way out in outer space. It sounds like, I don't want to use the word in English that what Rabbi Akiva sounds like in the story, because it's not a very nice word, but you know the word I'm thinking of. He sounds like, someone, let's use the Yiddish word, a lemelem. He sounds like someone should teach him a little bit about life. And what's going on? What would you do? You know what I would do? I would go to a bezdin, I would go to a Jewish court and say, what's this guy doing? He claims he has no money. What do we do over here? And let's talk about this in a Jewish court. I would, and I'm obligated to. For the sake of my family, I think that's what I'm supposed to do. So what does the Torah mean when it says, always judge favorably? What does that mean? This question we have in this week's parsha. This week we're reading about Pinchus. What's the story about Pinchus? So you read it last week, how Bilam wanted to curse the Jewish people, and when he tried to curse the Jewish people, Hashem didn't allow him to curse the Jewish people, and instead what happens is that Hashem forces him to bless the Jewish people. So Bilam blesses Jewish people, and Bilam has nothing to offer Balak, the king of Moab, who requested him to do something bad to Jewish people. He has nothing to give him. Finally, Bilam says, I have good advice for you. Their God hates immorality. You get the Jewish people to do Averis, get them to sin, and God will do the rest. So, sure enough, the daughters of Moab, or the Midian, they come around the Jewish camp, and they seduce the Jewish boys to sin. And the Torah says that the leader of the tribe of Shimon, name was Zimri ben Salu, he was approached by the people of his shaved of his tribe. Like, there was a plague. People were dying because of his sin. Like, what's going on? We're doing this and we're getting punished. Well, you're standing here, do something. So Zimri ben Salu, he went and he met the Kozbi Basur, who was a princess, and she told him, listen, my father told me I should only be together with the most prominent Jew that there is. So Zimri ben Salu says, that's me, and he grabs her by her hair, and he brings her to Moshe Rabbeinu. And he says to Moshe Rabbeinu, kosher or non-kosher? And if you tell me it's non-kosher, who allowed your wife to marry you? Your wife is also from Midian. This is what he says, and then he proceeds to sin with her. And then the Torah says that Pinchus went to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Pinchus said to Moshe Rabbeinu, didn't you teach us? It was a miracle that Moshe Rabbeinu forgot. Moshe Rabbeinu is not the type of person that forgets these things. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know what the halacha was. The Torah says this was a miraculous event because of something that Moshe did. That's not the point of today, but Moshe didn't know the halacha either. Pinchas comes over to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe says, Moshe Rabbeinu, didn't you tell us, Moshe Rabbeinu, that if someone sins with a non-Jewish woman in public, that kanoin poigen boy, that he is killed? So Moshe Rabbeinu responds and he says, the one who reads the letter should fulfill it. You read the letter, so therefore you should be the one that fulfills this instruction. And Pinchas goes, and Pinchas kills Zimri, and he kills Kozbi with one blow. What happens next? You know what happens next? What happens next is not so famous. What happens next is like this. What do the rabbis do after that happens? What would you do after this happens? Moshe Rabbeinu is quiet. The elders are quiet. Aaron is quiet. This guy comes, this young guy comes, and he gets up and he goes and kills him. What's going on? Sometimes in a shul, a guy gets up and he screams. Some people are very quick to scream in a shul. Something happens not the way they like things to happen in a shul, and right away they scream. But everyone else is just thinking, the other guy gets up and he starts screaming already. So, when a guy screams once, so you tell him to be quiet. He screams twice, you're thinking, well, perhaps he's at home, he's doing something, he's hitting his kids, he's being, what's up with this guy? So, Pinchas, the tribes, everyone else is thinking, something's wrong with this guy. He's the only one who got up, and he's the only one who's vengeful for Hashem's honor. So it says in the Gemara Yerushalmi that the Bavli Yerushalmi discussed this, and one opinion is that Pinchas, the Chachamim, the rabbis wanted to put him in excommunicate him. They wanted to put him in Cherem. The Gemara Yerushalmi says even more. Gemara says that the people of his own tribe, the tribe of Shimon, they wanted to kill him. Who is this guy? He's killed the leader of our tribe, the prince of our tribe. He would kill him. Who is this guy? And then we have Rashi. Rashi comments on the story. But before Rashi comments on the story, so what happens in the end? So Hashem announced in the beginning of this parsha, he was right. Pinchas, the son of Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, He is the one who did the right thing, and God's going to bless him, and God's going to make him a kohen. And why does God have to give all these praise to Pinchas? Because no one thought that way. Hashem had to give all this praise to him because everyone was out to get him. Everyone thought this guy was doing the wrong thing. Therefore, Hashem had to specifically go out and to show that they made the mistake of not judging him favorably, and he did the right thing. But it's very interesting, if you look in Rashi, the wording that the other Jews use about Pinchas. What's the wording they used? What was their way to attack Pinchas? What did they say? They said, did you see this guy whose grandfather fattened calves to idolatry? Let me ask you a question. If Pinchas was supposed to kill Zimri, right? Say the right thing, that's nice. If he wasn't supposed to kill him, what is he? He's a murderer. He's a murderer. The way they're talking about him is like a third grader. No offense. I know, fifth grader. The way they're talking about him it sounds like the little kids. Well, your mommy and your bubby and your Zadie did that. That's question number one. Question number two is, another question, if we're talking about whether Pinchas is a murderer or not, who cares who his grandfather is? He's a murderer. Why are you saying your grandfather's like this? Second of all, who was his grandfather? His grandfather was Yisrei. Yisrei didn't just fatten calves to bring them as a sacrifice to idolatry. Yisrei did much worse than that. Yisrei served every idol in the world. So if you want to point out that his grandfather did some mistakes, why are you pointing out the fact that he fattened calves to idolatry? Say his grandfather was the biggest idol worshipper in the world. Question number three, they don't say his Zayda. They don't say his grandfather. They say his mother's father. Why the wording his mother's father? What does that mean? So the answer is like this. In short, the answer is like this. The Rebbe explains that the Jewish people realized that it's possible that he did the right thing. It's possible this was the right thing to do, but they were upset because they thought he shouldn't have done it. They thought, why did Moshe Rabbeinu do it? Why are you the one who's standing up for the honor of all the Jewish people? Why are you the one who's choosing this mitzvah that everyone else doesn't do the mitzvah? They thought that they had to defend the honor of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe didn't do anything. Why is he doing it? They didn't question the action. They questioned his motive. They said, you're probably doing this because you're a cruel person. How do we know you're a cruel person? Because your mother's father fattened calves idolatry. What does that mean? The Ramban says, why are you not allowed to eat milk and meat? It says in Torah, don't eat a calf in his mother's milk. Why can't you eat a calf in his mother's milk? It's a very cruel thing. The mother's milk is meant to give the child life, and now you're cooking the child in his mother's milk. It's a cruel thing. The calf that gets the most breakfast, lunch, and dinner is a calf that thinks he's the most beloved calf in the flock. And why are you fattening up this calf? You're fattening up this calf because you want to bring him as a sacrifice to idolatry. So it's cruel. It's cruel. You're giving him, you're feeding him, you're making him, and then you're doing it all in order to sacrifice him to idolatry. So it wasn't that they questioned his action. They said his action fine. It could be that there's some law like that in the Torah that no one else thinks about. But why is he thinking about it? It's probably because he has something wrong with him. It's kind of similar to a story you find about Shimon and Levi earlier on in the Torah. You find in Parshas, right after they kill the people of Shechem, Yaakov comes to them and says, well, guys, why did you kill people of Shechem? This is wrong. They defend themselves and they say, should we let our sister be treated like a harlot? And Yaakov is quiet. But 5 parshas later, in Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov again, he challenges them and he said to them, you have deficiencies. Why are you guys doing this? It's your anger that made you kill Shechem. So first he accepted it, then he doesn't accept it. So the Rebbe explains that it wasn't that their action was wrong. It's that the fact they did it again and again, it shows it wasn't because of their righteousness that they did it. It was because they had some anger in them. It could be you're doing the right thing, but you're doing it for the wrong reason. So they challenged Pinchas, not that he did the wrong thing. They said to him, why are you the guy doing it? Why are you the guy standing up for the honor of Hashem when no one else is? And that's what they mentioned his mother's father. Torah says that there's a special connection between a father and a daughter, and a mother and a son. So they said, your mother's father was Yisrei. You have a connection to Yisrei. You're the guy, you have this cruel nature in you, and that's why you chose this mitzvah that no one else wanted to choose. But the Torah says that they were wrong. Who is Pinchus? Pinchus is the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen. Who is Aaron HaKohen? Aaron HaKohen is the one who the Torah tells us that he loves peace, he pursued peace, and he was the one that was Kohen Ish Chesed. He was a man who was so full of kindness. So it wasn't because of his cruelty. The Torah testifies, on the contrary, this was actually something fantastic. So let's get back to our question we asked earlier about judging everyone favorably. I'll tell you an amazing idea of the Sfas Emes that we should really think about every day, several times a day. Sfas Emes is a very good thing. Sfas Emes says, look at the words of Yeshua ben Prachya. It's unbelievable what he says. Listen to this. He says, you should judge. Doesn't say judge every man favorably. He says, judge the whole man favorably. Judge, have you done as kol ha'adam kavskos? Judge the whole man. You look at a person, you see what he did, but do you know the whole story? Do you know who raised him? Do you know who his parents were? Do you know how he was educated? Do you know his whole life story? You only see what he did right now. The Sfas Emes says when you want to judge someone, you have to look at their whole life story. And if you look at the whole life story, you know what's going to come out. You look at the whole life story, you're going to obviously choose kavskos. You're obviously going to understand that this happened somewhere. It wasn't the guy's fault. There's something in him that's good because he's a Jew. He has a neshama. And had he been raised like you were raised, he wouldn't be the way he is. So if you look at the person's whole life story, that's the key to looking at people favorably. That's the Sfas Emes. So he says, don't think the Torah is telling you to be naive. Someone does something, it could be interpreted they made a mistake. That's true. But you should see the good in that person. You should realize, look at the entire person. That's how the Sfas Emes says. The Rambam actually says an amazing thing. The Rambam says that this is a mitzvah. It's one of the 613 commandments to judge your fellow man favorably. Other commentaries say that judge your fellow man favorably is talking about a court case. If you have two litigants come to you, one is rich, one is poor, so people naturally think, as in the words of Fiddler on the Roof, if you're rich, they think you really know. So people think the rich guy must know. So the Torah says, no, you have to judge them both favorably. Don't think one is smarter than the other, one's better than the other, just because one is rich and one is poor. Treat them the same. That's how it's conventionally translated. We know the Rambam translated. Maimonides translates that this means looking at other people. Look at other people favorably. But the Rambam also says in Pirush Mishnayos, he makes it a little easier. The Rambam says, believe it or not, this statement is only given to us about people that either they're tzaddikim or they're in the middle. You don't know if they're tzaddikim or not. There was a famous tzaddik, you've probably heard of the Chassam Sefer, or Mishnah Sefer. His son's name was Shmuel Yosef, Ksav Sefer, right? So the Ksav Sefer writes an amazing story, famous story, how there was a bar mitzvah in Preshburg. At this bar mitzvah, this wealthy man who made a bar mitzvah invited all the great rabbis, and they had a special table for the great rabbis, and he took out this coin that he said was minted in the time of the Second Temple. He said, I've been around the world, this is the only coin in existence that is like this coin. This is the only one. And he passes the coin around the table, all the rabbis looking at the coin, and as the story goes, the coin is gone. Why is the coin gone? All right, the coin is gone. Why is the coin gone? So it wasn't that the rabbis were sitting with their photographers and they were sitting with their helpers, and there was just a table of the greatest rabbis of the time. They're sitting together and the coin is gone. So one of the rabbis says, listen, the Torah says you're supposed to vindicate yourself in the eyes of God and man. You have to always look good in the eyes of people, in the eyes of man too, not just in the eyes of God. So we got to do something that will vindicate us and show that we haven't done anything wrong. Everybody is going to be asked to stand up and empty their pockets. Just let's show that we didn't do it. So one rabbi, the oldest rabbi, he says, no, that's a problem because that will indicate that we are suspect. How could you suspect rabbis like that? A chutzpah. Don't suspect rabbis like that. So all the rabbis are like, we should do it. And he's like, nope. And so they don't do it, and they all depart. And later on that evening, one of the waiters found the coin. The coin is returned. And then the rich man feels bad. He calls all the rabbis back. They all come back. And he said, I called you back. I want to apologize to you. I found the coin. But I want to ask you, asked the oldest rabbi, you knew by telling everybody that you don't want to go with this idea of searching and emptying your pockets, you knew you're going to incriminate yourself. You knew that everybody thought that you were the guy who stole the coin. Why didn't you agree? So he takes out of his pocket this, hold on, relax. Look, he had exactly the same coin as this wealthy man. And he said, listen, you when you announced at the bar mitzvah that you have the only coin, I don't want to burst your bubble. I don't want to announce I have the same coin. But when you wanted me to get searched, what would happen if I was searched? Then everyone would say I stole the coin. So I happen to have the same coin, but so in that situation, the Rambam says, if the guy's a tzaddik, you have to always judge him favorably. He's a tzaddik. What if he's not a tzaddik? If you don't know, and there's a probability that he did the right thing, let's judge him favorably too. What if he's not a tzaddik and you do know who he is? The Rambam says in that situation, don't judge him favorably. Don't. That's what the Rambam says. Don't judge him favorably. Don't be foolish. Don't be honest with yourself. Judge people favorably. The Rambam says does not apply to everybody. It doesn't apply to tzaddikim or people which are kacha kacha. That's what the Rambam says. What's the problem with the Rambam? The problem with what the Rambam says is look at the simple translation of the words of the Mishnah. Have a donas kala adam l'kavschus. Judge everybody favorably. So what does it mean? Judge everybody. Is the Torah telling us to be naive? The Rambam seems to have a very strong point. This question is asked also in Bechaye. He also says the Torah says judge everyone all the time in its simple sense. And so what does it mean? And the story I shared a few months ago, I don't know if you remember the story, it's an unbelievable story. But Rabbi Ornstein from Eretz Yisrael, Mashpir Eretz Yisrael, he was studying in New York in Kvutza. Kvutza means that boys from Eretz Yisrael that come for a year, from Tishrei to Tishrei, to spend the whole year studying by the Rebbe. His sister got married in Tavshim Tes 1989, and he wanted to go to Israel for the wedding. The problem was there was a Farbrengen of the Rebbe on Shabbos, Yibes Tammuz. Yibes Tammuz Shabbos, so what's he going to do? Wedding's Thursday. So if you would ask anybody, any rabbi worth his salt, he would say, listen, it's a great idea to go with your sister's wedding, but it's not possible. But he is, all young people, you don't think too much, we just do what we need to do, and whatever we shouldn't, but that's what happens. So he goes on a flight to Eretz Yisrael, and he goes on a flight right back, and he falls asleep on the flight. He wakes up at the end of the flight. The plane's about to land in Kennedy Airport. Fantastic. He is about to land in Kennedy Airport, and the plane is circling. The plane is circling and circling and circling. Plane is circling and circling. What's going to happen? What's going on? Finally, the pilot announces there's clouds, there's thick clouds, it's middle of August, there's thick clouds on Kennedy Airport, we can't land there, we're going to land in Pittsburgh. All right. That's Pittsburgh, Boston, New York. There's Jewish people there too. I'll spend Shabbos there. The plane was supposed to land at 2:30. The plane lands in Pittsburgh, and he wants to get out of the plane. But the stewardess says, no one's leaving the plane. We're stopping here, and we're going to leave soon, refueling, and we're going to go back to New York. And he starts screaming, I have to give Shabbos, I'm a Jew, and I have to get off the plane right now, and you have to let me off, and the plane is here, I'm here, let me go out. And he's screaming and arguing back and forth. And finally, the pilot comes out. The pilot says, listen, I know what your issue is. You know you're a religious Jew and everything, but I promise you, we will land before sundown. They calmed him down. He went back to his seat. And sure enough, the plane lands in Kennedy Airport 3 minutes before sundown. What could he do? So he's there in Kennedy Airport that night. He had 2 pitas or something in his suitcase. He made kiddush on it. And the next day, he found some yellow cab that knew a little bit of halachas. Some must have been a Shabbos Goy in Muncie or in Borough Park, who knows where. And the guy, he drove alongside him all the way back to Crown Heights, all the way back to 770. And he's like, yeah, there's money in the suitcase. I don't know how much money there was, but it must have been a big sum to make the guy drive with him for 5 hours until he walked all the way back to 770. Either way, he comes 770 at 125. That was for bringing us at 130. And I can't imagine how he feels. He didn't keep Shabbos normally, or maybe at all. I mean, whatever. I don't know how you categorize his keeping of Shabbos. And now it's Shabbos Farbrengen. He didn't go to Shachas. He didn't Krista Torah. Not a Shabbos. So the best thing to do is to go to his room in the dormitory and go to sleep and just. But he's like, Tzibes Thomas, I should come. He comes to Farbrengen. There's a long Farbrengen, a 5-hour Farbrengen. At the end of the Farbrengen, Rebbe says, there are some people here which are confused because of their doubts of whether they kept Shabbos properly in trying to get to the Farbrengen. So they should say L'chaim, and they should go out of their doubts, and then we should sing a song from Israel, and through singing the song from Israel, we'll all go to Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach. What did Rebbe say? Look, let's analyze those words. The Rebbe didn't say to him, it was a good idea. It's a great idea you decided to come to take the flight. The Rebbe didn't say that. The Rebbe didn't say to him, you didn't break Shabbos. The Rebbe said to him, move on. You made a mistake. You have a mistake that there's doubts. You have doubts. You're confused by these doubts of whether or not you kept Shabbos. Those are serious stuff. The Rebbe is telling you, move on. That's the meaning of the words. This is amazing. This is something that we should think about every day, all day. The Rebbe says, what does it mean, judge everybody favorably? What does it mean, look at everyone favorably? It means give people hope. Give people hope. Find what's favorable about everyone's situation. Find something good in everyone's situation. Someone has a situation, they tell you, they share with you, they bare their soul to you. Find the good part that's going on. Find what's positive over here. Someone tells you what a test that they're having, a mistake that they made. Realize that there's something there. They still have a neshama. All hope is not lost. Who was the author of the statement? Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya. Why was he the author of the statement? Who was Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya? Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya was living at a time when the king Yanei HaMelech banished all the sages from Israel. He supported the Tzedukim and considered the Prushim. Anyways, Yeshua ben Prachya was traveling with his student, who we know from the Chassidus Hashas, there is our printed Shas, the Talmud Bavli, and there's other parts which were taken out because of the censor. And the student he was traveling with was Yashka, was JC, Jesus. He's traveling with him, and they are traveling to Egypt, traveling back from Egypt. They stop by some hotel, and Yeshua ben Prachya says, wow, the hostess of the hotel was so wonderful. And JC is like, I don't like her eyes. And Yeshua ben Prachya was like, he couldn't believe that. He's speaking about her kindness, and he's taking it in such a low, lewd way. So Yeshua ben Prachya was so shocked, he told him, you're not welcome anymore in my yeshiva. So JC wants to come back, and he says, no, you can't come back. And after 6 times of him trying to come back, finally JC says to himself, I'll come back one more time. If he lets me in one more time, if he lets me in, good. If he doesn't let me in, I tried it all I could.
JC Penny?
Not JC Penny, another one. But it's not worth a penny. Anyway, so he comes back the 7th time. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya is middle saying Shema. And he comes to him, he wants to get a lap back in yeshiva, he says, wait. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya says, wait, he's middle of Shema. But he took it as, go away, you're unworthy. What did he do? He he started a movement of idol worship, and that movement of idol worship caused hundreds and thousands of Jews to die over the centuries, hundreds and thousands, millions of Jews. The Crusades, and where did it all come from? It came because he didn't judge him favorably at that time. What happened afterwards? You know what happened afterwards? Only hear the first part of the story. He went to him after he became JC. After he stopped being his first name, he changed his name, not JC Penny or the other one, and he came to him and he said to him, you need to do tshuva, come back to us. I will accept you. I'll come back to us. But JC said, no, I can't. You taught us in the Talmud, if someone sins and causes others to sin, you can never do tshuva. It's hopeless. I can't come back. But Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya didn't know the Gemara. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya knew what he was saying, and he still said to him, you can come back. What do we see? So Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya, he said that there's hope even for him. He saw the hope even for him, and he said he could do tshuva. The point is that when you meet a Jew, judge them favorably means see the good in the other person, the good in their situation, and share it with them. Tell them why all hope is not lost, why they could do tshuva, they could fix their situation. I mean, each of us, we have our own challenges, and other people have challenges, and you have to encourage people. You have to find the good in other people. That's when the story for Pinchus. The Pinchus did something, and everyone thought it was a wrong thing, and everyone thought it was impossible, and that could be right. Everyone thought that there couldn't be any good in the situation. But really, buried beneath the surface, it was actually not just a mitzvah, but it was a mitzvah that earned him to be a Kohen for all generations forever. And so too, whenever every Jew goes to any situation, every Hashem gives a person a test, and it fails the test. The purpose of that experience, ultimately, is to bring us to a higher level. As the Torah says, and Talmud says, you cannot see from the white in your eye. You only see from the black in your eye. Sometimes a guy goes to a doctor, and he says to the doctor, everywhere I touch my body, it hurts. I was like, everywhere you touch your body, it hurts? Yeah, my head hurts, my feet hurts, my stomach hurts, my elbow hurts, my shoulder hurts. Everything hurts. Everything hurts. Doctor's like, let me check out your finger. Sometimes a person's situation, you can't see anything positive in the situation. You can't see anything positive. We get stuck in this bubble. You can't see anything good in your situation. You feel like all hope is lost. Your finances are not good. Your relationship is not good. Your health is not good. This is not good. And you feel hopeless. And you meet on a Jew, you have to give another Jew hope. I'm not saying, Chas v'shalom, the Baal Shem Tov says, if someone's going through something, and you say it's divine providence, everything Hashem doesn't know what He's doing, the Baal Shem Tov says, if you say that to somebody, it's absolute evil. It's absolute evil. Someone's going through a situation, you say, well, it's divine providence. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about encouraging, opening your heart, and encouraging a Jew, and identifying with where they are, being vulnerable, and empathizing, and giving them the encouragement to know that there is something good in them, and something good in their situation, and help them, be there for them. And by doing that, by seeing good in other people, we bring out more good in other people. And unlike the story I started with this boy Yossi, by being open to other people, it allows them to feel they can share with somebody, and allows them to feel that the situation could be better. And this is a key to, this is the road to Bias Mashiach. The road to Bias Mashiach is you see other people, and they have no reason to think any good in them, but to see, no, it's not hopeless. That there is something, there's some good in the situation, there's some good in the person. By identifying it or focusing on it, you bring out the good in them, and we come to Bias Mashiach.